Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We appreciate your presence at tonight's City Council meeting as we discuss matters that impact our community. Your participation is invaluable. For the record, tonight is June 19th, 2025, and the time is 6:30 p.m. I will begin with the roll call. So, Council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop.
Here.
Roden.
Here.
Overa.
Here.
Pearson.
Here.
Parker.
Here.
And Swarek.
Here.
With 7 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
And thank you, Christina. And would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And thank you all. Good crowd tonight, so the pledge sounded really good. Thank you all. I would like to remind everybody that's here as part of tonight's meeting that we do live broadcast this meeting. And would like to welcome everybody who is in attendance tonight here in the room, but also would like to welcome all those who are joining us by live broadcast. For those that are here in the room, if you do get an opportunity to speak as part of the meeting, I would ask that you use the microphone that's up here at the podium. When you speak from your seats, where you're at right now, the individuals that are listening by live broadcast can't hear the comments. And so we'd like for them to get the full impact of what's going on, so we'd ask that you use the microphone. And then when you do get an opportunity to speak, would you please introduce yourself? If you're a resident, please state whether you're a resident of Fair Oaks Ranch or not. And if you're with an organization that's here representing some of the topics that we're talking about, please just state what organization that you are from. And with that, we'll move on to citizens to be heard tonight. We had one individual sign up, and Mr. Madura. Is that right? How are you, Ron?
Good. My name is Ron Madura. I live in Fair Oaks Ranch on Riva Ridge. We are on a street that was used as a rerouting street when they did the work on the Tivoli project, when they did the overlay. So we know what it is to have people driving through your community and trying to get out of the driveway and things like that. What was interesting is my wife was having some feedback with the Director of Public Works, and he indicated that the plan for detouring through our community is going to be continued on the Dietz Elkhorn project. And we didn't know too much about that, but found out that it's going to take something like a year to 15 months probably to finish the whole project, $4 or $5 million project, and the number of people that drive between Fair Oaks Parkway and Ralph Fair Road, using statistics from the Department of Transportation in San Antonio, looks like it's about 1,000 to 1,700 people drive on that street per day. So to have another 1,000 people drive through our community on our street that's pretty little, gives a little bit of a problem to us. 2 issues. One has to do with safety concerns. Our streets are not designated to handle heavy traffic or high-speed traffic. The influx of construction vehicles and all detoured commuters would create hazardous conditions in our area, which has a lot of pedestrians, children, and cyclists using the streets to just entertain themselves. Our current infrastructure on Riva Ridge lacks the capacity to support the additional land, or additional load, I mean. There's no sidewalks, and the topography of the street, there's a huge hill when you come up Pimlico from Pimlico to Riva Ridge. Makes it even more unsafe because people pulling out of the driveways have very little time to deal with a car that's driving 30 miles an hour down the street. You're not going to see them. Alternate solutions for our particular issue. People have asked in the past, well, what do you want to do? What can you put out there? And one of the thoughts is to use wider streets like Keelan. And if that's not possible, maybe to use some other streets within the community and/or go to a dual flagging situation. Use a dual flagging situation during the daytime when the construction is actually working and the workers are out there, and maybe do something that's an automatic system called an AFAD, which is Automated Flagger Assistance Devices. So anyway, we're hoping the council and the mayor can reconsider the proposed detour plans and find something that's more safe for the community and with more suitable alternatives. Anyway, I don't know if you have questions or anything you want to. Nothing?
Well, it wasn't an item that's on the agenda, so unfortunately we can't discuss it tonight.
Okay.
But I did get your message and understand what your focus is.
Okay, and I did send out a letter to all the council members, and I think I sent it to Watanabe as well. So your Director of Public Works has it too.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks for being here tonight. Mr. Madura was the only individual that signed up to speak as part of citizens to be heard. Is there anybody else here tonight that did not get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak at this time? Okay. Then we'll move on to our presentations tonight. We have one presentation, which is the recognition of Casey Parker, our Multimedia Communications Officer. And I'll let Jim Williams explain the recognition that he received. which
Come on
is
down,
pretty
Casey.
impressive.
I know you hate this. Come on down. Where's Joanna at? Joanna, can you grab pictures for me? Thank you. So Casey hates this recognition, but it's well deserved. So I'm proud to recognize Casey Parker, our Multimedia and Communications Officer for the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, which received the 2025 Texas Association of Municipal Information Officers Award of Excellence for our On the Ranch e-newsletter, competing in the under 50,000 population category. So Casey was selected as the award winner from over 600 nominations. The TAMI Awards recognized outstanding government communications across Texas. Launched to enhance transparency and connection with residents, the On the Ranch newsletter delivers timely, relevant city updates straight into email inboxes. With a 77% open rate and a low unsubscribe rate, it's become a trusted, engaging resource that reflects our commitment to clear, accessible, and proactive communications. Yet again, Fair Oaks Ranch is being recognized for excellence in government service. This pattern of recognition is not an accident, it's a habit. A reflection of the top-notch talent we have on staff and the community leaders who are engaged in directing us. So thank you. We should be all proud. So Casey, I know you don't like this spotlight, but congratulations. This is an outstanding career highlight achievement that not only reflects well on you, but it also reflects on the Fair Oaks Ranch community. Thank you.
Pretty impressive, Casey. Thank you for all you do. In fact, we had an edition of the newsletter went out today. Thanks, Jim. It was the only presentation that we had on the agenda tonight. We'll move on to our consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. First is the approval of the June 5th, 2025 regular city council meeting minutes. Second, approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with Pavement Restoration Incorporated for asphalt rejuvenator, expenditure of the required funds, and execution of all applicable documents by the city manager. Third, approval of a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with JCM Commercial Services LLC for seal coating, expenditure of required funds, and execution of all applicable documents by the city manager. And last, approval of a second reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, amending the Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Appendix A Fee Schedule, Article A2, Building Fees. Is there any council member that would like to remove any of these items from consent to consideration? Then with that, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Jonathan? And could I get a second? And a second from Scott. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. With that, we'll move on. We have two public hearings on the agenda tonight. And the first public hearing concerning the creation of the Post Oak Public Improvement District pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 372 of the Texas Local Government Code. And Christina, I have the time now is 6:40, and I'm opening the public hearing. And I'll turn it over to Jim. You're going to give the presentation on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so real quick, before I get started, this is our first rodeo during a PID. I could not have done it with P3 Works, Andrea Barnes. She's been coaching me through this process. We also have another lifeline tonight here, Patrick Byrne from Sundance Analytics. Thank you for coming. So if we get a stumper question or some issue, they can help me answer that question. So without further ado, let's get started. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of the Post Oak Development PID. Most folks in the room here are familiar with it, but just to build the record for the public hearing, I'll add this piece of it. And let me turn this on. It works. Here we go. Okay, so just real quick, I'm going to summarize the PID, the petition, a PID 101. What does the PID do for us? And then the City Council's next decisions. There's a ton of other decisions that we need to make. This is the next set of wickets that's in front of us right now. Just for everyone's information and for the record, all notices required for this public hearing, both posted in the newspaper and on the website, were posted in accordance with Texas Local Government Code 372-09C. So real quick, the petition, it was submitted by Bernie Ranch LLC on May 2nd. May 20th, the council accepted the petition as complete and ordered a public hearing, and that's what we're here doing tonight. The proposed PID is part of a comprehensive project plan, which includes an amended development agreement and annexation, of course, this PID. And this is the general area. Folks are familiar with the 345-acre parcel, also known back in 2014, branded as the reserve at Fair Oaks Ranch. The new plan calls for 278 residential units on that parcel, some Ammon Road improvements, a PID financing option, and annexation, plus a whole slew of other things. But those are the highlights. So what is a PID? What's kind of the basics of it? So there's a regulatory framework around PIDs. There's two that we use, Texas 372, the Local Government Code, and our PID policy. So Local Government Code basically is the legal framework and the regulatory framework in Texas, and it handles everything from the petition all the way through implementation and dissolution of a PID. And these PIDs can go on for quite a long time, up 20, 25, 30 years sometimes. The PID policy, which we adopted in 2024, takes that regulatory framework from the state and just kind of puts some sideboards on it it tailors it for us here at Fair Oaks Ranch. So why do you want to use a PID? Basically, you want to use a PID as a financing scheme to incentivize development of these special districts. It's an economic development incentive tool. And really the benefit of it is you extend this public infrastructure that costs a lot of money, and you do it without burdening existing taxpayers. That's the bottom line. So a PID is not another political subdivision. The City Council always has agency over this PID. So the types of PIDs that usually float around in the area, they have the pay-as-you-go PID, a reimbursement bond PID, and a construction bond PID. The two PIDs that will likely come from this PID, we haven't quite figured out which one yet because there's some other work that we do, more decisions coming later. It would likely be a reimbursement PID, but it could be a constructions bond PID. The difference between the two will be based on perceived risk in the bond market. The reimbursement bonds, the risk will be lower because as capital is being spent, the value of the developed property increases and the risk that the assessments won't get paid goes down. With a constructions bond PID, you're floating a lot of cash and there's no assets behind it until after it's built. So there's a little bit of, the risk scenario is a little bit different. But otherwise, they both require bonds. So a public improvement district, the financial implications, so this is not necessarily a negative word. These are just the things to take into consideration. This is non-recourse debt to the city, basically meaning recourse debt would be, the opposite of that would be recourse debt would be if there was a default, not only could they go after the assets and the cash flows associated with that, they could go for other cash flows in the city and other assets to recourse. This is non-recourse debt. The only recourse in case of default would be the assessments backed by the property, okay? The issuance of PID debt, it does not reduce our bonding capacity so we could still issue bonds. The big one here that we tagged earlier this week was it does count against our bank qualified debt. And what that means is there's certain amounts of debt we could issue. It's up to $10 million of debt. If you go beyond that, the interest rates, the tax-free interest rates start to increase, so it would count towards that debt. So if we wanted to issue more debt, more bonds, we would have to take that into consideration. But the good news in the development agreement, we basically can get the difference between, if we end up getting in that situation, the developer will pay us the difference. They'll reimburse us that. All city costs incurred as a result of the PID, which we do have an administrator on hand right now, all that can be charged off to the developer and paid for through the district. So the city taxpayers and paying into the general fund don't pay for the costs associated with this PID. And then we have hired a third-party administrator to help us with that work, and I'll go into that in just a little bit more here in a minute. So what are the city obligations for a PID? So these are the two that we're flying without a net on. We need to hire and oversee a PID administrator. That could have been us, but we're not. We hired an administrator. And then we also have our duty to inspect the public improvements. What we get help with is all this other stuff right here. These are all requirements for administering a PID. I won't go into the details of what they are. It's a slew of regulatory requirements. We have P3 Works on hand to help us administer that and make sure it happens, and the district will pay for that. So that's a good thing. So lots going on here. Who's on our team, right? Well, the city is clearly responsible for it. The city council and the staff will make sure and take accountability for everything that happens in the PID. But we have a great team that's already at work working on these things, working together and working with the city, helping us get this all accomplished. What we haven't sorted out yet is this trustee relationship. I highlighted that. It's probably going to be advisable. Well, that's one of the decisions we'll have to make down the road, is whether or not we decide to use a trustee. And it's going to be probably recommended that we do. We don't need to make that decision tonight or coming up. Okay, so the next decisions. So the next decision to do is close the public hearing and consider the resolution creating the post-PID. On advice, we should not close the public hearing until July 3rd. So this is something we don't normally do here at the city, is close public hearings later on another time, but you're going to see that tonight. We're going to leave the public hearing open. We're going to advise to leave the public hearing open. And then once we get to the decision part, in the main part of the decision, there's 6 criteria that have to be met per 009 in the code. And I put that in the cover letter, what those draft findings are. We can adopt them as they are, or we can make changes to it based on what we hear in the public hearing or what we find out between now and the time we take action. But basically, we have to make a finding on the advisability, the nature of the improvement, the estimated cost of the improvement, what the boundaries are, the method of assessment, and the proposed apportionment of costs between the district and the city. So there are draft, again, foot stomp, there's draft findings in the cover letter. If you will likely see that show up in the resolution. Time for the public hearing. Take any questions.
The next portion of this was public testimony.
Oh, yes, sir.
And so if, Mr. Simpson, I know you signed up, but the next public hearing is about the annexation, and I believe that's the one you wanted to wait for. Okay. Is there anybody else here that wanted to speak as part of the public hearing related to the PID creation? Okay. Any questions from council?
Mike, just back to the trustee point you just made. What is the function of the trustee?
So Andrea's been coaching me, but basically, I'll give you the simple answer. The trustee basically will make sure that the payments get made, and someone has to handle the cash flows, right? We still have to sign off on that, but they actually do that work for us. Yep.
Anybody else? Jim, I just had a quick question. So when you were mentioning this, you mentioned the responsibility and obligations of the city towards this PID. But really all that obligation goes against the developer as part of this. Our responsibility is more as an oversight in the execution of the PID?
That's absolutely correct, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Just to clarify. Any other comments? Okay, as Jim mentioned earlier, at this time I would normally close the public hearing, but in this case, we're going to hold off closure and we will reconvene the public hearing at our next council meeting where we consider the second reading of the ordinance that we're going to look at tonight. And so from this point on, anything else we need to do?
Just make a motion to adjourn the public hearing, and since it's not gonna be, it's basically like a recess, you'll have to post notice of when you're going to reconvene the public hearing. So that'll be a notice for the next meeting.
But we don't want to use the words adjourned, is that correct?
Well, the statute says the hearing may be adjourned from time to time, so I'm reading from the statute. So you can adjourn the public hearing and reconvene at a later date.
So I can make a motion to adjourn the current public hearing and to reconvene the same public hearing at our next council meeting on July 3rd.
Yes, sir.
Get a second. Scott. Any further discussion on the motion? Any questions from anybody? You're really challenging me here, Jim. Motion to adjourn. Okay. With a motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion to adjourn and reconvene this public hearing at July 3rd is approved.
Okay.
And with that, we'll move on to our second public hearing tonight, which is a public hearing on the extension of the Fair Oaks Ranch city limits by annexation of approximately 345-acre tract of land within Comal and Kendall County, Texas, generally located south and west of Ammon Road and east of the Stone Creek Ranch subdivision. And,
I jumped ahead.
oh, I didn't see you, Carol. I was
Sorry.
looking for you.
My apologies. So, good evening, Mayor, City Council, and meeting attendees. As the mayor noted, this public hearing is to provide the interested persons to be heard on the proposed voluntary annexation of the tract of land on Ammon Road. On December 12th, the city received a petition from the landowners for voluntary annexation of approximately 344 acres. The undeveloped tract is in the city's ETJ, and it is contiguous with the city's boundaries. Both are requirements of an annexation consideration. The intent of the land is for a residential development of 278 single-family homes. The residential development is to be known as Post Oak subdivision. If the annexation is approved, an ordinance amending the city's future land use map from rural residential to neighborhood residential will be brought to City Council in the near future for your consideration, along with a zoning designation ordinance. The reason for that is the 1 acre lots. This slide here depicts the location of the tract in relations to our city boundaries, including IH-10 and Ralph Fair Road. This slide depicts the property concept as of today, as it was also included in the development agreement. The annexation authority for the City Council and provisions of annexations at the request of the landowners on a petition are found in Texas Local Government Code 43, Subchapter C3, and in the city's home rule, Section 202. The provisions in the C3 subchapter state that the City Council must first negotiate and enter into a written agreement with the owners of the land in the area for provision of services, and that means city services. City Council must hold a public hearing on the proposed annexation, which is what we are here for tonight. On May 20th, the City Council approved resolution authorizing the city manager to begin negotiating a services agreement and to set tonight's public hearing. Regarding provision number 1, which is the services agreement. Later tonight, City Council will act on the negotiated services agreement. The basic requirement of the agreement includes a statement describing each city's service to be provided on the effective date of the annexation. Additionally, a schedule that includes the period within which the city will provide each service that is not provided on the effective date. My apologies. If the agreement is accepted tonight, it will be signed prior to the second reading of the annexation ordinance so that we're in compliance with the law that it needs to be in place prior to annexation. Provision number 2, which was related to public hearing requirements, the statute includes that we must provide all persons interested in the annexation opportunity to be heard, that the notices of the hearing must be posted on the city's website, published in the newspaper of the city, which in our case was the Bernie Star, and mailed to each school district in the area and to each public entity that is located in or provides services to the area proposed for annexation. That would include like your fire department and all of the franchisees, GVTC, et cetera. All of these notices were appropriately completed no later than June 8th. Additionally, the Unified Development Code, Chapter 3, states that a notice of the annexation must be posted on the property. We have complied with all notices and postings in accordance with state statute in the city's Unified Development Code. So tonight, at the conclusion of the public hearing, you will consider and act on a resolution approving the proposed negotiated service agreement. The City Council will then consider and act on the first reading of an annexation ordinance for the property. Then on July 3rd, Council will consider and act on the final reading of the annexation. Lastly, staff is proposing that on August 14th, that the P&Z Commission hold the public hearings on the future land use map amendment and then the zone designation ordinances and make a recommendation to the council. Council on August 21st will hold the public hearings on the future land use amendment and zone designation ordinances and act on the first reading. The final reading on the ordinances will be September 4th. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. And at this time, we'll take public testimony, reference the annexation, and Mr. Simpson.
I made some notes, so hopefully I can be clear and concise. My name is R.W. Simpson. I have lived in Fair Oaks. My wife and I have lived in Fair Oaks since 1992 off of Post Oak Trail, not related to the Post Oak development. Little offense there, but no. What I'm really here, and one thing I do want to say at the start of this is we are on wells, the majority of Post Oak Trail. Everybody is on well water. What I'm really here to say, though, is we are here to express our strong opposition to the proposed Post Oak development project. As y'all are all aware, our region is currently facing a severe drought. Wells in Kendall County are going dry. Canyon Lake has reached record low water levels. Proceeding with a large-scale development during this critical time is not only irresponsible, but dangerous for the long-term sustainability of our community and natural resources. Water is not an infinite resource, and continuing to permit expansive development projects under these conditions sends the wrong message about our priorities. I urge you, council and mayor, and other decision makers to have the courage to follow the example set by Comal County, which wisely enacted a freeze on new development in light of the ongoing drought. On a related note, as I mentioned, we're on well water. My next door neighbor is on city water. I mean, we share a fence line. I'd reached out to the city to try to get city water to our house. I'd offered to pay to have the water line extended the 400 feet so there'd be no financial obligation to the city. For our house, we were told there was not enough capacity available to hook up another house. And now you want to add over 200 houses to Fair Oaks Water. I ask you, what will it take for you to recognize we don't have enough water to support this explosive growth? It's time to put the needs of current residents and the health of our environment above short-term economic gain. Please take decisive action to halt the Post Oak development and consider a broader freeze on future projects until our water level recovers and all Fair Oaks Ranch citizens have access to city water and a more sustainable path forward is secured. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Is there anybody else here tonight that didn't get an opportunity to sign up for this public hearing that would like to speak? Okay. And Christine, I failed to mark the time when we opened the public hearing. Did you capture that?
Yes, I noted the time, and it was 6:52.
Thank you, Christina. And I have the time now is 7:01, and I am closing the public hearing. And I will allow council an opportunity to ask questions or comments.
Good, yeah. It's my understanding that this isn't necessarily a new development per se, as there was an existing contract that has been amended, and the LUEs that we were gonna issue for the water is about a third of the water usage that we were. So I appreciate the comments and the public discussion that going forward, you know, that's something that we should definitely consider. But this one, I think we kind of pumped the brakes on, and it seems to be the lesser evil for sure for now.
Council members' work is correct. We have LUEs allocated and reserved for quite a few years of over 600. This proposed annexation and development agreement has reduced that 600 to 278. So we feel like water absolutely can be provided. It is in our allocation that we receive every year.
The allocation was for the original 600-plus LUEs.
Correct, correct.
Sure. We kind of closed the public hearing, but no, if you have,
I don't want to be that guy. So no, I don't know, and I doubt so.
I just asked you to speak for the microphone.
You know, just knowing how severe a drought can get and looking at where we are compared to the drought of the 50s, people, the scientists or forecasters believe we're about the second or third year of a drought compared to where we were in the 50s of the 10-year or 12-year drought that has. So we could still have a long way to go. I hear what you're saying, that, you know, we are better than we were, but it's still additional water that you're going to be taking from the system at a time that our water systems are already taxed. That's all I have.
I appreciate the resolve here, and I hope to see you, you know, dedicate yourself to this somehow in the future to help us make decisions of when it comes to water.
One other thing is, I saw that Comal County freeze, and the way I read sort of the report in the material was not that, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, that not that Comal County said, we're not going to allow any more development. I think the company for which they procure water said, we can't provide water to these developments, so you can't develop those properties. And so my understanding is a totally different situation than what we have here. And I don't know if you watched the last meeting we had, but one of the comments I had was, we're looking at impact fees for the future. One thing that I wanted to look at some point is reassessing our water supply into the future. So that not only is it on my mind, but I'm venture to guess that it's on everyone's minds.
And I believe it was Texas Water Supply.
Yeah.
Was the private company that was supplying water out of Canyon Lake. And you addressed one other situation, which was the water line. It's really not the water line towards your residence. And it's really not on the agenda tonight, but it is something that I can meet with you later during the week or at a later time, and we can discuss that. Future plans, what we could do as part of that. All right, any other comments from council? appreciate you being here tonight, and thank you for stepping up and providing your comments. Anything else we need on the public hearings?
For
Kinda-
my aspect, no.
No? Okay. And then with that, we'll move on to our consideration items tonight. The first consideration item that we have is the consideration and the possible action approving a resolution by the City Council of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, approving a services agreement for the provision of municipal services for a tract of property on Ammon Road, and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement and providing for an effective date of the agreement. And Carol, you're going to do this one too?
Yes, sir.
And we do have a presentation with this also. I believe it's on page 132.
Correct. And you stole my thunder a little, so I'm just going to jump right on in.
You got it.
I'm going to also let you know, at your position tonight, we placed an amended services agreement that it differs from what was in the packet that I will refer to later in this presentation. So, on December 12th, the petition for voluntary annexation that was received included a draft services agreement as required by Texas Local Government Code to begin negotiating the provisions of city services to the 278 subdivision lots. Last month, City Council approved an annexation, accepting the annexation petition, and then authorizing the city manager to begin his negotiations with the landowner on a written services agreement. The requirement to do so is found in Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 43, Subchapter 3, Section 430672. It states that the first step of annexation is to enter into a written services agreement for the proposed annexation. This section of the subchapter further states that the agreement must include a list of each service to be provided on the effective date, along with a schedule that includes the period within which the city council will provide each service that's not provided on the effective date of the annexation. The agreement that you have tonight for your consideration lists the following services: police protection, fire protection, and emergency medical services. This section has changed from the one in your packet. It now states that the city provides these services through a contract provider. We will also provide water services upon annexation. Solid waste collection and recycling will be provided. This section, I'm sorry, I apologize. And then lastly, we mentioned the maintenance of roads and streets upon acceptance and dedication. This section changed from your packet by clarifying that the acceptance of the streets will be in accordance with the development agreement. Staff recommends approval of a resolution approving a services agreement with the landowner and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement prior to the second reading of the annexation ordinance. After this item tonight, City Council will act on the first reading of an annexation ordinance. Then on July 3rd, again, Council will act on the final reading. The executed services agreement, if approved tonight, will be an exhibit of the final ordinance. It will be attached to the annexation ordinance as an exhibit. I thank you, and I can answer any questions.
Any questions from council? Nobody? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then with that, could I get a motion to approve a resolution approving a services agreement and authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement?
So moved.
Keith?
Second.
Jonathan? Seconded. Any further discussion from council? Motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Thanks, Carol. The second consideration that we have on the agenda tonight is the consideration and possible action approving the first reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, providing for the extension of the Fair Oaks Ranch city limits by annexation of approximately 345-acre tract of land within Comal County and Kendall County, Texas, generally located south and west of Ammon Road and east of the Stone Creek Ranch subdivision, and providing for an effective date. And Carol, anything else you need to add to?
Just going to reiterate a couple of items. There is no presentation. As noted earlier, Chapter 43, Municipal Annexation, Subchapter C3, titled Annexation of Area on Request of Owners, authorizes the City Council the annexation of territory. Section 202 of the City Charter authorizes the City Council to annex territory by extending and enlarging the city boundaries. And finally, Article 6 of the amended development agreement between the city and the landowner provides a provision that the property owner will petition for voluntary annexation. As presented in the public hearing tonight, the annexation is approximately for 345 acres of undeveloped land that is in the city's ETJ on Ammon Road. All requirements and compliance for voluntary annexation have been met. Thus, staff recommends approving the annexation ordinance.
Questions from council members? Everybody's good? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Can I get a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance providing for the extension of Fair Oaks Ranch city limits by the annexation of approximately 346 acres of land within Comal and Kendall County, Texas, generally located south and west of Ammon Road and east of the Stone Creek Ranch subdivision?
So moved.
Jonathan? And Emily? Any other further discussion from council? With the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. I will move on to the third consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, authorizing and approving the submission of a grant application for the state and local cybersecurity grant program, and authorize the city manager to execute all documents in connection therewith. And Brian, you gonna talk to us about this one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Brian Lejeune, IT Manager.
Wow.
Before you is a consideration item regarding the State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program, or SLCGP as we call it. This is the same grant that we submitted for previously. The city submitted our application this year on February 28th, and if awarded, the city will fund 20% and the grant will fund 80% of the total $99,434. This is contingent upon council approval and inclusion in proposed FY 2025-26 budget. The grant requires services that we are already subscribed to, along with annual requirements we are also completing, as you can see there at the bottom of that slide. One of the conditions of funding requires we pass a resolution that must contain verbiage for submission of the grant application, along with a commitment to provide matching funds, who's authorized to accept, reject, alter, or terminate the grant, like our city manager, and an assurance by the governing body that funds will be returned in the event of loss or misused grant money. The project will replace end-of-life devices and increase bandwidth on our City Hall server room for future projects that will be outlined in our IT master plan, which is scheduled for a future council meeting next month. Replacing these end-of-life devices will reduce our risk of failure and decrease administrative overhead for maintaining a mixed environment on our network. The network switches will be installed in our City Hall server room and police department server room, and will cover not only equipment in the server racks, but also replacing the end-of-life switches for our workstations, copiers, security cameras, and other network-connected devices. Utilizing this grant will reduce the overall funds needed to complete the project. The city will utilize Texas Department of Information Resources, DIR, Purchasing Cooperative, which will fulfill our competitive requirements. The recurring budget impacts are expected to slightly increase due to projected support costs. And this is the final phase of our network upgrades that began this year and will be completed should we fund this project next fiscal year. I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Brian, how did you learn about the grant?
I heard about it through the Texas Information Sharing and Analysis Organization, so DIR.
It feels to me like it's almost a perfect fit for what you were talking about earlier months ago and thinking about getting. Is that right?
Yes, they have different phases. It's a multi-year grant, but they do different
Gotcha.
projects that are geared towards certain things each year. So this is what fit in for this, upcoming fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Good for you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
If the grant is not awarded, will you be requesting, or is it already budgeted, that the city pay for the total project cost?
That would be a recommendation.
Okay. And so really, if it all lines up, we're looking for 80% reimbursement from the state.
That's correct.
And then do you have any, just based on data or talking to people, any idea what percentage chance of the grant being accepted? Or the application being accepted?
We were awarded last year.
Okay.
All we had to do was just fulfill the requirements. So I'm fairly confident that, we will be awarded.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Keith.
And are we free to use this grant money for these services, the server and the networking? There is no restriction?
Well, this particular grant was written just for the network upgrades.
Okay, gotcha.
So we'd have to use it just for that particular project.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Good
Good
point.
question.
I'm not looking down there.
Doing that thing where I feel like I should say something when you.
I'll hold them back, sir.
All right. Any other questions from anyone here tonight? With that, then, can I get a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application for the state and local cybersecurity grant program and authorizing the city manager to execute all documents in connection therewith?
So move.
Ruben and Dale. Any other discussion from council? The motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Good job, Brian.
The next item that we have for consideration tonight is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution establishing a fire and emergency medical services committee to review and evaluate matters related to public safety services and providing an effective date. And I'll kick this off, and whatever I miss, I'll hand over to the city manager if I miss anything. But currently, the City of Fair Oaks Ranch has an agreement with Bexar County Emergency Services Division Number 4 to provide fire protection and emergency medical services. And the contracts or the agreements that we have will expire on September 30th, 2025. Now, public safety and security, I believe, is our highest priority, and it is critically important to ensure that we provide the means for high-quality fire protection and emergency medical services going into the future. And so as part of this, I'd like to establish a committee to evaluate the options of new agreements to cover these services. And so tonight's item is really to identify council members to be a part of that committee. And the individuals that I recommend to be on this committee are myself, Scott Parker, and Jonathan Swarrick. And for Ruben Overa to be identified as an alternate if ever needed as part of this committee. So this committee is an advisory committee with the purpose of reviewing and evaluating options for future fire protection and emergency medical services for our entire city. This will include the committee's responsibility is gathering information and conducting studies to identify what are the best possible options for fire protection and emergency services for our city. Once concluded, the committee will provide a justified recommendation to council for future agreements. The committee will meet on an as-needed basis, and we will also meet with appropriate staff members as needed to go through the options. This committee will have no legislative capability and will not make any rules or will have any quasi-legislative authorities. And once the agreements are approved by council, once we bring it back, a recommendation to council, council reviews the recommendations and we make a selection, the services of the committee will no longer be required. So really it's the identification, no more than 3 council members on the committee at any time, to review the options and really explore what is out there so that we identify the best capabilities to go forward with fire protection and with emergency medical services to support our city operations. And once the committee identifies and makes a recommendation, we'll bring it back to council for council's approval. So, did I miss anything?
No, sir, as usual, you covered it well.
Well, not as usual, but thanks. Any questions from council?
I think it's a good idea.
Thanks, Keith. Any questions from anyone here tonight on this item?
Craig?
Yes, ma'am. Seth?
Seth Mitchell, resident. This sounds like a good idea. Could you distinguish what this committee will be doing with what the consultant did a year or so ago when they analyzed? Yeah. Can you distinguish?
So the study that was done was really to determine the requirements needed. And Scott, if I missed that, would you please help me out? Sure. But the capabilities overall of what we need to provide fire protection and EMS services for our city. So it identified, number of personnel, number of requirements along that, and then possible locations to provide the response times is what we wanted as part of our city operations with that. My view on this is that we are taking that information that was identified as part of that study and going forward to determine who will provide that service for us. And so there are several options that we can enter into agreements with, the individuals that provide fire protection or that provide emergency medical services. And we want to take the results from that study and go forward to determine what is the best option out there for an entity to provide that service to us.
Okay, so you're not setting aside the recommendations from that study. You're using that study as a basis to do further inquiries.
So I hope we would, yes.
Absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I'll add for the council and Mr. Mitchell, I've extended the agreement with CPSM and Joe Pozo, the person who presented to the council last year, to assist us with this process. So they will be intimately involved.
So the second question is, do you anticipate these will be public meetings or not?
No.
They will not?
No.
Okay, thank you.
The results of what we get after the committee meets definitely will be presented at public.
Right.
Which will, but the committee will meet on an as-needed basis to go through and identify the requirements.
Well, there's certainly no requirement that it be public, but to the extent that you're using the committee to build leverage in your negotiations with the ESD4, at certain times, it may be useful for them to be public. Thank you, though.
Thank you, sir. Good question. Emily, did you have something else? Okay. Any other comments from anyone here tonight? Then from council, could I get a motion to approve a resolution establishing a fire and EMS committee to review, assess, and provide recommendations to the city council regarding fire and emergency medical services?
So moved.
Keith?
Second.
Emily with the second. Any other comments from council? Motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved. And we'll move on to our last item tonight for consideration, which is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution directing the city manager to terminate a Chapter 377 project funding agreement, economic development agreement, a Chapter 377 project funding agreement, economic development agreement between the city of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas and the Fair Oaks Ranch Municipal Development District. And Scott, you just want to explain?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the title suggests, this resolution formally terminates the project funding agreement with the MDD for the Community Center project. At the last meeting on June 5th, the council voted to indefinitely postpone the amendment application that would have fully funded the construction project. So after consulting individually with the mayor and the council members, I believe it is in the best interests of both parties to terminate agreement, which effectively ends the project in its current form. So tonight's item is simply a formal direction to release the previously allocated $1.2 million grant application that currently exists with MDD, and terminating that agreement will allow the MDD to release its committed funds to reallocate them to other potential projects in the community. That's the crux of the resolution. I do want to take a moment to thank the city staff for what I believe has been exceptional work on this project. Over the past 2 years, our team, led by project manager Kelsey Delgado, procurement manager Clayton Holscher, and Public Works Director Grant Watanabe, have delivered a professionally designed, competitively procured, on-time, on-budget plan that was, I believe, exactly what the council had directed. I thank them for their diligence and professionalism, and I think their work ensured that the council had the information that you needed to make a fully informed decision. So while we're not moving forward with the project at this time, I am proud of the work that was done and confident that that work will leave us well positioned if we want to revisit this idea in the future. That's all I have. Thank you.
Questions? Go ahead.
By doing this, this doesn't in any way prevent us from coming back at a later date if we need to and reapply this.
It does not. In fact, the part of our discussion was that even had we moved forward, we would be essentially applying for a new grant anyway because we were looking to extend it. So either way, we would have to go back to MDD at a future time. Yes.
Anybody else? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then from council, can I get a motion that the city council approve a resolution directing the city manager to terminate a Chapter 377 project funding agreement, economic development agreement with the Municipal Development District for the construction of a civic center?
So moved.
Ruben made the motion and Jonathan seconded. Any other discussion from council? With the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion is approved. And that completes the consideration items that we had on the agenda for tonight. We do have one workshop item that has multiple parts to it, and which is discussing the fiscal year 25-26 general fund budget. And tonight we'll get an overview, then finance, city secretary, administration, communications, human resources, information technology, and then our non-departmental shared budget. Summer, you going to kick this off?
Yes, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. So tonight is the second workshop on the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget. In our first workshop, we covered public safety and public works. And tonight, staff will present the remaining general fund department budgets, except for municipal court, which will be presented at the next workshop. So as an overview, the general fund includes property tax revenue at 3.5% increase over the 2024 tax levy, and sales tax increasing 4% over the current year estimate. The proposed total operating expenditures are increasing 3.7%, including a 4.5% increase in personnel wages. However, total expenditures, including capital and transfers, is decreasing slightly. This proposed budget includes the continued funding toward the replacement of city vehicles and equipment and maintains the operating reserve at 50% of operating expenditures. In total, revenues are projected at $10.97 million and operating expenditures are proposed at $10.25 million. After transfers and capital outlay, the result is a budgeted surplus of almost $260,000. Now that surplus primarily supports our goal of maintaining a 50% operating reserve. Additionally, we're adding $54,000 to the unassigned fund balance, further strengthening the city's financial position, helping us prepare for rising costs in future years and maintain a stable tax rate over time. I will point out that the slide in your agenda packet refers to this amount as unallocated, and in this case, it's both unallocated and unassigned. I'd like to take a moment to clarify the distinction between those terms to ensure consistency and understanding throughout our budget discussions. So the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, statement number 54, outlines 5 categories of fund balance for governmental funds. Those are non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned. These categories reflect how restricted or flexible the use of those funds are. So the city currently does not have committed funds, so that category is not reflected in our fund balance. But within the unassigned category, the city adds a further distinction between allocated and unallocated amounts. So for instance, purchase commitments called encumbrances at the end of a fiscal year, those are shown as unassigned fund balance in the annual financial report. But internally, we consider those allocated because we know those funds will be spent. Similarly, if the city adopts a budget with a deficit, the portion of unassigned fund balance used to cover that deficit is also considered allocated since we've planned to use those resources. So I recognize that some of these terms may be unfamiliar or unclear, but at any time you can reach out to me and I can provide further clarification. So I'll begin with the Finance Department's proposed budget. Now, the proposed budget for finance is $770,460, and 44% of that is funded by the utility fund. Personnel costs make up almost 80% of the budget, and services account for just over 20%. Year over year, the proposed budget is increasing 5.6%. That's driven by a small increase in personnel costs and higher costs in the services category. Appraisal district fees are expected to increase $4,100. Additionally, the department has proposed $5,000 for investment advisory services to provide guidance and strategies the city can implement for maximizing our investment portfolio. And we've added $2,250 for required debt disclosure reporting provided by Samco Capital. But other than these highlights, there are no significant changes to the department budget. Are there any questions on finance before I move on and I'll present the shared department?
Everybody good? Any questions from anyone here tonight? No questions.
Okay.
So the shared or non-departmental budget totals $765,537, and 13% of that is funded by the utility fund. The largest components of this department are transfers to other funds, which include the Strategic Projects Fund and the Equipment Replacement Fund, and then shared services, such as facility contracts, electricity, and insurance. The remaining budget supports other services and supplies. This overall budget is decreasing 28% from prior year due to the reduced amount of transfers to the Strategic Projects Fund. But there are increases. I don't know where that went.
Something going on? Do you need to?
Yeah. Sorry. Now, where was I? Okay, so the total department budget is decreasing 28%, and you'll notice that's mostly in the transfers due to a decrease in the amount of transfers to that SAP fund. Sorry. So those increases include $29,000 for new carpet in the public safety training room and ID badge readers for the public safety building, and $52,000 for annual city events that was previously budgeted in Human Resources Department. Those include the July 4th celebration, State of the City, and Christmas on the Ranch. Those are the highlights for the shared department. Are there any questions?
No questions? Anyone here tonight? Okay.
All right, we'll continue to the next department.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Christina Pachocchio, and I serve as your City Secretary, and I appreciate the opportunity to present the proposed budget for the City Secretary's office for fiscal year 2025 to 26. The proposed budget for the City Secretary's office is $327,652. The budget is composed 71% for personnel, 28% for professional services, and 0.4% for supplies and maintenance and operation. In terms of funding, 99% of the budget is supported by the general fund, and 1% comes from the utility fund. This slide illustrates a comparison between last year's budget to this year's. The most significant increase is seen in professional services. The proposed budget includes $12,449 to recodify the city's code of ordinances and to codify the Unified Development Code, or the UDC. This essential legal and administrative process ensures compliance with current state laws, eliminates outdated provisions, and enhances the usability and clarity of the city's governing documents, not only for staff and elected officials, but for also the public. Recodification of the city's code of ordinances was originally proposed in 2021, but was postponed due to the anticipated update of the UDC. With the UDC update now nearing completion, staff believes this is an appropriate time to move forward with codifying both documents. Thank you for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All good? Yeah, Keith?
I just have one on that. What would be the target completion date for that recodification? Do we know?
I believe they said it's like a 9 to 10 month project.
Okay.
It goes through a legal review. It goes through a pretty strenuous review, making sure that it's compliant with the new laws, the titles are correct, and that things are just appropriate.
So this would kick off in the new budget year, so it'd be sometime late next year, late next in the fiscal year. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. I think it's a good idea. So.
Anybody else? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Thanks, Christina.
Thank you. Next.
You ready, Mayor?
I'm always ready.
All right, Mayor Council, Jim Williams, Assistant City Manager, and I'll be presenting the FY 25-26 budget for the administration. So our budget is split out by funds. About a little over a third of it, 2/3 of it, excuse me, is covered by the general fund. The remainder is through the utility fund. And inside of our budget, a little more than 3/4 of it or so is 85% of it, excuse me, is personnel cost. The remainder is services, supplies, and budgets. The total proposed budget for FY 25-26 is $940,814. And we do have 5 positions in the department. Highlights for the budget, the only thing that's really changing, anticipated to change, is estimated personnel costs. The other services remain, and supplies, capital outlay, those kind of things are expected to stay flat. So no significant changes to the administration budget. Pretty status quo. I'm happy to take questions.
Nobody from council, anybody else here tonight? Okay.
Okay, moving on. So Jim Williams again, Assistant City Manager. I'm going to present the communications budget this year, and for FY 25-26. And just as if you didn't notice, for this year we're proposing to break out the communications department as its own department, so that we can better track the communications spending and expenses compared to what we're doing in HR. Last year, or this current fiscal year, it's combined with HR. So for FY 25-26, for the communications department, we have one position, Mr. Casey Parker, and we're proposing the budget to be $152,799. The budget is split almost 50-50, general fund, utility fund, leaning slightly towards the general fund. And in this particular budget, about 2/3 of it is personnel cost. The remainder of it is services and supplies, things like software subscriptions, computer gear, communications, things like that. Changes to the budget, you can see the personnel costs, we're anticipating them just the normal, or what we're anticipating across the board for personnel increases. And then in the services, we're seeing an estimated slight bump in services. And I'll go into explain that here in just a minute. So budget highlights again, for the FY 25-26 year, we'll make this a standalone. We're proposing to make this a standalone department. And then we're asking for an additional $10,000 in the professional services budget so that we can implement social media aggregator survey and polling software. That's identified in the strategic action plan as a project task. So a real quick overview on the what is social media aggregator software. Well, let me start from the top. So in the SAP, we identified an improvement opportunity in our communications department. So our communications is performing at a pretty high level right now. As earlier this evening, we saw the award for our TAMI Awards, all the great content, all the great communications coming out of the department. It's a one-person deep shop, but we do think we can get more productivity out of that team. The team is Casey, and sometimes I help out, and Ms. Merrill helps out. But we think we can get more productivity out of the comms team, and we think we can expand the scope of that engagement, and we can do it without increasing FTE headcount. These are identified in the strategic action plan, and we think we can do this with one software buy. All 3 of these, knock them out in one shot. So the request is to implement social media monitoring and automation software. From that, what we're expecting to get out of that is basically a deeper insight into resident sentiment. And so it goes 2 ways. It could be event-based or like emerging issues, things that are popping up in the community that maybe we're not paying attention to. The software would alert us to those things, and we can get in front of it faster. Or if we had big decisions that the council or the city was that were under consideration by the city, we could poll residents and kind of get their thoughts on get their sentiment on those ideas and brief that up. Definitely would use that software to streamline and automate our work posting to different social media sites and channels. So if you see the social media posts that we do right now, some of it is automated, but not all of it. We still have to go in and touch all that stuff and do it. We're hoping to be able to pop it all into one, basically shoot one out, and it fans out into all the other channels, so it'd save us a bunch of time. And then we'd add in a polling and survey capability with that. Just an example, I pulled what this software could do. This is from Lenawee County, Illinois. And basically, this would be a dashboard that the communications officer, me, the city manager, could just pop up in the morning when we came into work, or we'd see, or any time at all, and we could see how things are trending in the in the community. We would probably, this would all have to be configured, and it would be configured based on data sources streaming in from social media sites, news sites, surveys, polls, or anything we can get our hands on as far as the configuration. We would look at general issues in the community and just get a snapshot of what was going on, and if we saw exceptions, like in this particular example, it looked like there was parks and rec issues that were trending negative. I wouldn't worry too much about these right off the bat. I'd drill into this and see what was going on and really save some time instead of having to go through all those social media sites and scan all that stuff. You can also see kind of what folks are talking about and what the most common phrases and words and terms are using, kind of see what the context is, and then just generally see trending on community engagement. So another example in the polling world, what you could do, this I pulled from Springfield, the city of Springfield, Illinois, as an example. And what this represents is trending on just a question about overall satisfaction. It would be a straight up question you'd ask the community, how are you satisfied with the city? Well, you can see in this trend, this example, for that particular question, you can see how the city was comparing to a peer organization over time, and we can see what we're doing. And if we saw, like, it's forecasted in this model to go down, but if we saw it spiking up or spiking down, we could drill into that data and see kind of what was going on and try to get ahead of it a little bit faster, a little bit more proactively. You could also take this data set for the same type of question, and this is from the city of Chicago. And what they did is they took this same question and they basically broke it out into districts. And so as on the dashboard, if I was asking that question, I saw certain districts or certain areas of the community trending down, I probably would drill into that and try to figure out why before I really started worrying about, or I'd address this first. And then that would save us time and really focus our efforts. So for what we're guessing, it's going to cost about 10 grand to add this survey. We think it's going to be added good value to the city, and we're asking for your consideration. And that's all I have. I'm happy to take questions.
Go ahead, Rude.
This product, do you have a program in mind, or you're going to look into what options there are?
We do have one program in mind, but I would like to look at other options. We do know that one is popular. We know it works, but we should do our due diligence, look at other ones.
Is the $10,000 estimated cost one time to get it up and running, or is that going to be $10,000 every year going forward if we do it?
It's one time. It's getting up and running, and then we're expecting it to be every year.
At the same amount or less?
That's our expectation. Yeah.
Same amount?
Yes, sir.
And then, and I don't know if you had the two different slides where you pick up on positivity or negativity on news sites or social media, and then the surveys. If we do this, at certain times, if there's a topic that we're discussing, or whether it's a survey, will we get will you report results to us, or will we get those results?
That is absolutely the intent. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I guess this would be, program specific, but I'm just curious, when you do surveys, is there sort of like a validity testing involved to where is it bots? Is it one person, responding 100 times? Is that involved? That way we know that the data that we're getting is actually accurate?
Yes, the surveys would address those kind of, biases and features in surveys. There's always the chance that a bot could come in and hammer the survey. This software would filter that out.
Okay.
It would know. I don't know how it knows, but it knows. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Your questions?
Would it be possible, as you get closer to making, would it be possible as you get closer to making a selection to get a brief on the software as a product and how it would apply to what we're doing in the city? You said there's multiple software packages out there.
There's one for sure, and I suspect there's others. But we have to evaluate that. But I know for sure there's one that does this.
I'm just I'd be interested to see if it's something that could really take the temperature on key issues in the city. And again, I always worry about the the bot issue about, you know, how valid is something that we're going to end up possibly responding to.
Yes, sir, I can certainly relay that concern to potential vendors, and see how we would address it.
Thank you.
But, I mean, I'll just add, if approved, and as we get towards implementation, I would absolutely want to provide a presentation back to you all, because as Jim mentioned, there's lots of functionality with this, but my favorite part is the community survey, because it has the ability to do kind of micro polls, one-off questions, which maybe that's what you were getting at, Councilmember Olvera, but it also has the community survey, which is repeatable year to year, so you can ask the same questions, whether it's overall satisfaction, whether it's about street conditions, public safety, and you can get trend lines over time. So that's my favorite feature. The advantages with the social media listening and automation is also very useful, I know, to the communications department. But as part of that, if we're going to release a community survey, we certainly want you to know what we're asking and, you know, your input on other things we should be asking.
I agree, and would appreciate hearing about it. Thank you.
Jim, I was just, and you had the budget up there of this department, but in the packet on 180, it's only about half of that showing. Is this the portion that's allocated to the general fund and not the utility fund?
This would get split, right? Yes, it
Split.
would be split.
So when we do these, can we get both of those in these packets so we have the full budget? So when you talk about, just for clarification, when we say like a department, maybe this is a summer question. When a department has, you know, X number of dollars and we say half is here and half is here. If I
So
only see the general fund
that total
here-
$152,799 does include the utility fund.
Right.
That is the all-in total.
Correct.
But you just want to see the breakout
Well, we don't have the utility fund budget in here, and we just have the general fund. So when I go to the detail, I'm only seeing half the picture.
for the detail, true.
So it'd be good to have the both funds, like if we're gonna do the budget here, this department split, we need both utility fund and the general fund in the detail. That would be my recommendation.
Okay,
More work.
yes. The utility fund does get to be a little trickier, just because the chart of accounts doesn't line up exactly as clearly as the general fund. But yeah, next time we'll have the entire general fund and utility fund
Or
included.
short of that, well, that may not.
We'll be going over the
possible.
utility fund at our next budget work session anyway, so you will have both.
Yeah, but when you split it like that, I'll lose the perspective, right? When we say it's up 2%, I'll lose the perspective of the other fund. So I like kind of having them together, but maybe and it may not be possible, Summer, but, you know, a summary that shows, you know, this department, you know, salaries is this, and for the utility fund, and it's for the general fund, and here's the total that you're referring to here, just so we can reconcile it. We can talk further, it
This is
helps.
actually a change we made to the presentation. I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago. In the past, when we did these presentations, we would show only the general fund portion, which I thought didn't give you the full picture of what the total
That's
departmental
good.
budget was. So we intentionally wanted to show you the full budget and the split between the two funds.
And I think that was part of my request a couple of years ago, so that's good. I'm just talking about the detail. I just
Yeah,
don't have
the
the
detail
backup, you know, supporting that, that's all. We can talk
Okay.
further, it's more of a recommendation, so.
At the next budget workshop, though, since we are going over the utility, you'll have the full thing too.
Sure.
So you'll be able to see
Okay.
all funds.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Any other questions from anyone here tonight? Yes, ma'am. Would you mind? Yes, ma'am, please. And if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourself.
Carolyn Gillespie, I am a resident. If a program like this was purchased or implemented in the city as a result of a survey that might be taken, would the public be informed of what the survey showed? You know, the survey says, would we know, or would it just go to the city council and then the city council says, well, we had a survey and it said that so many % of the people like this or that, or their opinion was X or Y or whatever? Would the residents be able to know the result of a survey?
I would, I don't know why,
Absolutely.
right. I
Yes.
just don't know the process of how it, through this program, is there a process, a way it gets published, or?
Yeah, I mean, I believe there's some interactive dashboards, but any report that we can publish, you know, kind of live, if you will, but certainly any survey that we provide to the council would go on our website and be available to the public.
Okay, thank you.
No question.
Yeah, just to add on to that, the preference would be to have live dashboards running. I don't know how the configuration would go to get there, but at a minimum, we could, you know, pull PDF reports together. But yeah, I fully expect to be transparent and provide those reports.
Okay. Good question, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, R.W. Simpson, resident again. Two things. One is I would really encourage you to articulate the problem you're trying to solve with this package. I mean, is there a problem getting feedback from the city residents today? Are there issues with that? And then also, typically when you buy a package like this, you would expect that this is going to make you more efficient and that you would see reductions in other areas of your budget. And so that was all I had.
I can address that. So it's really an improvement opportunity. It's not so much a problem. Can we get more productivity out of our team without increasing our headcount? And I think we can if we just automate some tasks and do some software. So that's it. I don't think we do have day-to-day challenges in communication. We work through them, but overall, I believe we're performing pretty well in that area, and we can do better if we had a little help.
Well, I think you mentioned that there were two of you that were kind of having to step in and help occasionally with the communications. Do you foresee this software freeing that time back up, or are those tasks that you guys are still having to help with, would they still, you know, need to be done by a human?
Yeah, great question. Usually when Ms. Merrill and I are jumping in and helping out, it's because Mr. Parker, Casey, is tied up with something else. He might be on vacation or out for the day, or he's busy handling another issue, and we just jump in and take care of it. I don't think those things would go away. I just think we can get more out of our team by automating some tasks.
I'm going to say that what it sounds like to me, Jim, is that I know we're doing a really much improved job communicating out to the public at all these outlets. Casey does a great job, and the mayor is putting his videos out. I think what this is doing is allowing feedback back to us. We're getting stuff out. The only place we get feedback is either through an email to us or here at council meetings, and that's about it. So this is a way, I think, for us to get the temperature of the citizens on big topics. So I think it's an area that we've not had before. So this is going to provide us more intel for helping us make sure we're meeting the needs of the city. That's the way I understand it.
Yes, sir. It would certainly provide that capability plus the automation work that we
Yeah.
are looking forward to.
Yeah.
Dr. Liddell Morris, resident. I just, off the cuff, there's a lot of focus on the survey capability here. So how does this account for selection bias in your survey results? How does the software account for selection bias, like participation bias, as far as who actually answers the survey, if decisions are to be made off that data?
Very good question.
Yeah.
Hey, ma'am, would you mind restating your name real quick? Dr. Liddell Morris. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how that works, but I know when we were looking at that potential vendor, they did mention that is something that they do. How it actually happens, I don't know. We can get that information.
And I think Scott mentioned that this is going to come back again, possibly, or?
As we get closer to implementation, assuming it's approved, yes, we would absolutely want to kick it off for the group. There are, separate from this, there are community survey firms that actually engage in statistical sampling techniques on community services. If we just put out a poll or a community survey like this, then to the questioner's comment, then if we just put it out en masse, there would be selection bias, no doubt. I think that's who takes up survey gets a poll. If we want to go to more statistical sampled methodologies, that's an option. That would be probably separate from this package. There are services that do that, but this would be, probably just putting out a poll to residents to serve. It does filter, like Jim said, for the repeat, bot activity or multiple entries. But yeah, those who complete the survey would be reflected.
My follow-up comment to that is just that I think it's important to understand who is actually answering this survey. So if this is coming in email form, for example, and maybe my peers are not checking their email or clicking on this every time, then you're going to get a skewed sample in terms of your results. So
Sure.
This is just for us to consider putting in the budget. Once it's budgeted for, we'll have a lot more detail on what it is, what this package is, who is doing it, all the feedback and everything, and whether there may be other options as well. So we'll be able to really flesh through this a whole lot more. This is just, right now at this level, trying to determine, do we want to budget 10 grand for this potential capability?
And just to piggyback on your comment, I think we're looking at, it's not just 10 grand, because it's 10 grand initially. And this isn't, as I recall, maybe Casey, you can just nod your head. I think this came to us in years prior, before, but we may be at a point now where, now that you're on board and your feet are wet, this may be the ultimate tool for you to go ahead and continue with what you're doing. So I wasn't leaning that way a couple of years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, Jim. It may have predated you, but we looked at it, and this may be something that would be beneficial, I think, for us. Thank you.
I think good questions, and a lot of people have raised some concerns or things that need to be considered as part of this. And Jim, I think you started off mentioning that you had one area that you were one software that you were already looking at that you thought provided all these capabilities, but you were going to research others. And I think a lot of the questions that came out tonight can be used as guides for some of the questions that we need to address and make sure we get the right software.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, anybody else? Good discussion, thanks.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Joanna Merrill. I'm the Director of Human Resources and Communications. And tonight I'm going to be presenting the proposed fiscal year 2025-26 HR budget. And as you heard just a minute ago, the communications budget is now being presented and provided separately. So tonight you're only going to see the HR side of that. So to kind of kick off this workshop item, we'll start with the overall amount of the standalone HR budget, which is currently proposed at $332,635. And this reflects about a 6% increase from the current year. When broken down by category, approximately 80% of that is allocated to personnel-related expenses, and then 19% for services, and the remaining 1% does cover those supplies, maintenance, and operational costs. When looking at the budget from that fund type, Human Resources does support both general government and enterprise operations. So that is reflected in the graph showing 48% coming from the utility fund and the remaining 52% from that general fund. When we review the year-over-year budget changes, most adjustments are minor, but the most notable being the increase in professional services category, which is primarily due to a proposed $6,000 investment in advisory fees. So kind of in closing, this year's budget reflects a strategic alignment to transition the communications department to a standalone department budget, and then a targeted increase of about $6,000 in professional services to add again that retirement advisory services fee. This is mainly due to a very low-cost solution that we're looking at right now that brings in expert support to monitor our retirement plans. This is something that just hasn't been done historically, and as a result, our fund design just hasn't been updated in over 20 years. The advisory services fee does include monitoring, recommending investment options, ensuring fiduciary compliance, and providing employee education, and then just kind of benchmarking that performance and the fees as well. This is a very small investment that ensures our current plans are compliant and that they better serve not only the needs of the city, but also the employees as well. Outside of these adjustments, the remainder of the HR budget remains largely unchanged, and that does kind of conclude the HR budget for tonight, and I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Nope.
Great.
Good. Anybody else questions tonight?
All right, well, I will turn it over for the next one.
Thanks, Joanna.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening, Council. Brian Lejeune, IT Manager. We'll be going over next fiscal year's proposed 2025-26 budget. The IT budget is composed of $801,168. Of that, 58% through the general fund and 42% through the utility fund. Separated out by category, we have services at 56%, personnel at 32%, shared services at 9%, capital outlay at 3%, and a small percentage for the supplies, maintenance, and operations at 0.1%. On the next slide, you can see the differences between our current fiscal year and the proposed budget. Personnel costs having no change, services with a slight change up, shared services with an increase, supplies at no change, capital outlay at no change, and a slight increase for our total when compared to the previous adopted budget. Of these items included, we are adding $14,500 in shared services for new public safety cell phones for patrol officers and placing $27,000 towards the annual workstation replacement, which will cover a portion of our proposed numbers. We have a short list today with other items saved for IT master plan, where other items will be requested and incorporated into the budget. The IT master plan presentation is scheduled for the July 17th regular council meeting. And that covers our presentation for today. I'm available to answer any questions.
Just more out of curiosity, do you manage all the cell phones for the city?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering why the cops aren't budgeting their own cell phones.
Yeah, Patrol did not have them previously.
And this is to give a cell phone to every one of our patrol officers?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
Do they just use radio now?
Alex Willis. Or they have to come back to the PD or use their personal cell phones.
Okay.
Which can be problematic, just using a personal cell phone to try to call people or call from a block number.
Got it.
Anybody else? Any other questions from anyone here tonight?
I'll pass it back to Summer Fleming to close this.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
So that does conclude the budget workshop for tonight. The next workshop will be on July 3rd and include the municipal court, the utility, CIP, and strategic projects. And then in August, after we receive certified values from the appraisal districts, we'll incorporate the calculated tax rate into the budget discussion and work through any additional budget requests and funding options.
Any follow-up questions for Summer overall? Process? Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Summer. That really completes what we had on the agenda tonight. We'll move into requests and announcements. Do any council member have any announcements that they'd like to present as part of the meeting tonight? No? Okay. I have 3 announcements. First, just a reminder to everybody, July 4th, laser and fireworks show Again, this year, we'll be partnering with Fair Oaks Ranch Country Club. Same location, a couple improvements have been made to the show for it. We expect, because it's on Friday night this year, we do expect a bigger crowd, somewhere in the neighborhood, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 people to attend. That's what we're estimating and preparing for. Please come out and join us. The gates open at 6 o'clock, and you can come find your spot and stake out where you want your chair. And from 6 till the fireworks start, which is somewhere between 9 and 9:30, enjoy the music, entertainment, fun, and they'll have some food trucks if you get hungry. Second announcement, we're looking for resident volunteers to join our boards, committees, and commissions. It's that time of year. We do have some individuals that will vacate this year, so we do have some open positions. If you're interested, we're in the sign-up period now. I believe it ends in August sometime. But if you are interested in joining any of our boards, committees, and commissions, please contact our city secretary's office, and they can point you in the direction of what you need and how to fill out an application, et cetera, to get involved with this. And then last, on June 28th, our Fair Oaks Ranch Police Department is sponsoring a community lunch at the Roost, which will start at 11. And really, it's a time for residents to come out and enjoy a lunch with our Fair Oaks Ranch Police Department, and really for residents to get to know our police officers and for our police officers to get to our residents. So if you're interested, please come out and join them on the 28th of June at 11 a.m. at the Roost. Scott, that's all I have for announcements. Anything else?
I have one item, Mr. Mayor. I want to take a brief moment to acknowledge the significance of today's date. We are meeting on June 19th, widely recognized as Juneteenth. It's also known as Emancipation Day or Freedom Day. As I'm sure everyone knows, that marks the anniversary of the day in 1865 when Union troops arrived in Galveston to enforce the emancipation of enslaved people. More than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued. And of course, this has deep roots, this day right here in Texas. So while Juneteenth has been celebrated in many communities for generations, it was formally recognized as a state holiday in 1980. Texas was the first state to do so. And in 2021, it became a federal holiday with overwhelming bipartisan support in Congress. Currently, our city does not recognize Juneteenth as an official city holiday. It's important to note that we are holding this meeting on Juneteenth. Many of our neighboring jurisdictions, including Kendall County, Bexar County, and the city of Boerne, they have formally recognized the day and closed their offices in observance, and I believe it's appropriate for us to do the same. I think our city values history, and this is a part of our shared history as Texans and Americans, and while our area may have different perspectives on various issues, I haven't heard any meaningful opposition to recognizing Juneteenth, and if anything, I think that recognition is overdue. So as such, I intend to propose including Juneteenth as a city holiday in the FY 25-26 budget for the City Council's consideration starting next year. Thanks for allowing me to mention that tonight, and I yield the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for the announcement. Does any council member have anything that they would like added, any topics for a future agenda? More budget? Okay. Christine, anything we missed tonight?
No, sir.
Anything else we need to cover? Scott, anything from your area?
No, sir.
Christine, I have the time now is 8:14, and we are adjourned.